Three, two. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Football League Cup podcast. Today, Chris and I are going to be reviewing the Premier League season so far with a special guest, a Liverpool fan. Matt, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Matt. I'm a Liverpool fan. You might know me from the Discord. I'm MJL there. Hi. Happy to be here.
Lovely to
Yeah.
have you, Matt. And it's Chris here. So a little bit different. No transfer news today. So Fred's going to start us off. So yeah, Fred, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so it's been a pretty weird but interesting Premier League season so far, hasn't it?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, I remember in November, everyone was saying Spurs was going to win the league. Now Spurs are in sixth, and they're nowhere near the title.
I mean, that's because, after the 6-1 win, everyone thought, well, Spurs are the challenges, and I think it was a little bit too soon. And then Mourinho had his usual meltdown, didn't he? So, and they haven't performed. I think they've underperformed with certain players have got, and they haven't had Gareth Bale going until the end of this year. So they've had a few struggles, and they dropped out. But Leicester have done well. I think they're doing quite well at the moment as well. So there's been a couple of surprises like West Ham and ones that weren't expected to do so well this season. And I mean, I know Matt's a Liverpool fan, but Liverpool's performance in the Premier League has absolutely collapsed, haven't they, so far? I don't know what your take is on it, Matt, but it's so different to what last season was as opposed to now. And I know they've had a few injuries, but it's been probably worse than what they've projected, really, if I'm not saying out of the tone with that one.
I mean, yeah, so we lost Gomez and Van Dijk almost at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
And they're out for the entire season. I don't think we'll see them, even if speculatively we get to a Champions League final, I don't think we're going to see Van Dijk or Gomez play in that. I mean, they're even in question for the Euros. So, and we can obviously sit behind the injury crisis and be like, that's the reason. I think we've lost minute playing due to injury double more than the next team. But got to be said that FSG didn't buy a defender when they should have done at the beginning of the January break, when it was obvious that we needed one. It's a good job that we did, because if Matip had got injured just after the end, we would be totally screwed. But I think some of it comes down to I have 3 points about Liverpool's kind of, I wouldn't call it a failure of a season, but many people would. One of them is Klopp's tactics in deciding to play our best midfield players as defenders and totally annihilate the midfield. To me, it made no sense. We had kids from the academy. We had Kabak and Davies that, even if you have a weak defense, at least you have a strong midfield, right?
Yeah, but don't you think it was forced? Because, I mean, it's risky to play, what's his name again, the Rhys Williams in defense in the Premier League.
Yeah, it is. We could have had, let's say, a partnership between Phillips and Williams, and it would be risky. We would ship goals for sure, but we did anyway. And without the midfield, we can't score. It's a speed thing. Season before and the season before that and the season before that. So when we were playing at our best, it was so fast from the back, from our third to the midfield to their third to score in very short time. But without the ability to carry the ball forward like that, we can't even score. So yeah, it would have been risky. And I think that's kind of reflective of Klopp taking a more cautious. The football we played last year was more cautious than the year before and stuff like that.
What's your thoughts on? I've said this to a few Liverpool fans, but what's your thoughts on Thiago as a player at the club? Has he been used right, or do you think his performance has satisfied where you think he's been this year? I'm just curious about that.
I mean, for me personally, I think he's been good. That's all I want to say about him. Really, he's an amazing player, but without the rest of the team properly there to support him, then we can't. He's not a miracle worker, right? And the other thing I think people have to remember is, without any fans, the football looks a bit flat. And I think that's true for all teams.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
for Liverpool, especially, the reflection of that is like we play flat football. I don't know if you know what I mean by that. Like, it doesn't make sense, but
And I think that's interesting what you're saying there about fans, because if you look at some of the games where some of the top teams have lost, if they had their fans there, I think it'd be completely different. Let's take Aston Villa beating Liverpool, Man United losing, and some of the shock games that we've had throughout the season. And I do think fans are a massive factor to that. So, going out on the pitch, it must be difficult with no fans when you're playing, and it's very silent. So, yeah, 100% agree with you. And I mean, that's probably one of the aspects for Liverpool as well that's caused that, because Anfield is such a scary stadium to go to. I mean,
Yeah.
they were unbeaten for such a long time, and then suddenly there was just this complete collapse because, teams were not scared to go there. And it was a similar effect that Old Trafford had with Man United for a few seasons where people were scared to go there. And I think, yeah, fans are a massive part to play on that one.
Yeah, but Matt, what are your thoughts on players like Mo Salah and Sadio Mane, who are supposed to be the miracle workers in the team? Do you think they've almost let the team down this season because their performances have been lackluster?
Mane, and I love Sadio Mane. I'm wearing a Sadio Mane shirt like at this moment, but like I think there's 3 or 4 games where he's had moments where you'd expect him to score, and he should score. A player at his level, and I have to say at his wage and his ability, he should be scoring those moments. And I think there's probably maybe I would suggest maybe 6 points, possibly even 9 points in the season that we've dropped simply because he missed sitters.
Yeah.
And that's not really good enough, to be honest. But I don't mind, and I'll come back to why I don't mind in a moment. And Salah, no, I think Salah's been fantastic. He's carried us. Without some of the goals he's made, we would be in a really bad situation at the moment. Like, I still think we can compete for Europa League spots, maybe even champions. But without Mo, that's not that wouldn't have happened. And just to take like Sadio as an example, and the whole team as well. Like, I think Liverpool fans, it doesn't really matter what fans of other teams, of other clubs like think about this, but have to remember a little bit that we went from Champions League final, and then what was it, 97 points in the Premier League, Champions League final, Club World Cup, win the Premier League. Like it was an amazing run. So for them to run out of energy a little bit, to be a little bit lost, I suppose it's kind of natural, especially when, as we said, there are no fans. There's no like booming crowd at Anfield. I think Sadio will be fine, but the real kind of let down this year, I suppose, is Firmino.
Well, touching on Firmino, would you sell him in the summer? I mean, because he's got great technique and he's a good player, but I don't think he's quite as consistent as Mane and Salah can be on their day. So, would you sell him, and who would you potentially replace him with, if you could?
I wouldn't sell him.
You wouldn't sell him.
No. But from this point onwards, he's not a nailed-on starter. I think keep him because 2 reasons. One, he knows Klopp and Klopp knows him. The team knows him and he knows the team. Like all managers say it, but Klopp says it a lot. The football is a team game, right? And he's not as dangerous as he used to be. But the idea that we have maybe, let's say, played Jota up front.
Yeah, he's doing well, isn't he?
And then if he gets tired or whatever at the 65, 70th minute, we can bring on Roberto Firmino. It's a great swap. He's a great bench option still. Although we'll see.
Do you think Firmino will go with that though? Because I mean, Jota I rate Jota. I think he's a quality player, and I think he's definitely should be playing more games next year. But do you think Firmino will want to do that? I'm just because obviously he's been a starter, hasn't he, for quite a while.
That's a good point. I'm not really sure. I mean, how old is he now? He is 29. So it's either he goes next year and finishes his career at another big European club, and then the question is who would take him, especially on recent form, right? Like, he's not going to Bayern, he's not going to Barca, he's not going to Real Madrid. So I think if he wants to finish his like late 20s, early 30s career at Liverpool, then I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
And then maybe he can go back to Brazil or something like that. But yeah, I think if he won't like it, but then he should play better.
Yeah, 100%. And just leading on from that, what's your expectations for the rest of the season, and what are your expectations next season, and who would you like Liverpool to bring in, for the squad, the type of player?
Okay, so expectations for this season, I don't have any. I would like us. I think there are some people that would prefer us to not be in Europa League and just take the next season as a rest. I love European football, so I want to see us in Europe, whether it's Europa or Champions League. I've got no expectations of what we can do there. Like it's possible that we get into Champions, and it's possible that we get nothing. So in the Champions League, I know this is a talk about Premier League, but very briefly, I still think we can win the Champions League. It might sound insane. It probably is insane, but I still think we can win the Champions League. For next year, we need to replace Gini Wijnaldum. He's going, I think.
He's off to Barcelona. So that's been agreed almost. Yeah.
Yeah. So we need to replace him desperately. Any other player that has a ball retention ability of Wijnaldum, we should go for, irrespective of cost. I think he's a bit underrated, and people are like, well, he can score for the national team. Why can't he score for Liverpool? But that's not his job at Liverpool.
No,
his job at Liverpool is retain the ball and don't get dispossessed. And he's really good at not being dispossessed, which is a really useful skill, obviously. Apparently, I saw that the club is monitoring Sabitzer from Leipzig.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
If that's what Matthew Edwards wants to buy, be my guest. I have a lot of faith in Edwards and Klopp's recruitment.
Oh yeah,
I
mean, Klopp's a manager that can turn average players into world class, can't he? So I wouldn't be concerned about that. Would you want anyone up front, or they've been linked, and apparently, according to the Athletic, they're quite close to the Conte centre back, although he's quite injury prone. So what would be your thoughts around that one? Have you seen much of him?
No, I haven't, to be honest. And I think a lot of the time when we look at players and think we want that player for the club, you're looking at highlight reels most of the time.
Absolutely.
And highlight reels always show a bit of an imbalance. But up front, I don't think we need to buy anyone. I don't think FSG will buy anyone. And I think this kind of thing about buying Haaland or have people think that they want to get Mbappe. It's not going to happen, and I don't think it's necessary. Because I think we should put our faith in Diogo Jota, personally.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, it's always interesting to see what, and it's been an interesting season in my view. Obviously, I'm not a Premier League fan, but it's, as a neutral, there's been some interesting games and seen some interesting results. So yeah, I appreciate that. Fred, what's your thoughts about? Because Manchester United have had something similar, haven't they, with Anthony Martial and those sort of players where they've missed points. And I think, they've, unless they had Bruno Fernandes, they'd probably be in a similar sort of situation.
Yeah, I think apart from Manchester City, I think that's the situation at almost every club this season. Because if you look at Spurs have relied on Kane and Son. If you look at Villa, they've relied on Jack Grealish. When he got injured, they dropped off. So I think it was always going to be an inconsistent season. But going back to Manchester United, you mentioned a player there, Anthony Martial. But he hasn't been the only underperforming player at the club this season. But in around January, it looked like Manchester United could mount a potential challenge for the league. But now that's far away. Chris, what are your thoughts on Manchester United season so far? And how do you think it's going to go?
I think it's going to be a case of what could have been with Manchester United. I don't believe that the front three are strong enough for you to mount a title challenge. I mean, I say that, but Man City haven't even got a striker and they're winning the league. But they're a certain different sort of team, aren't they? Martial has massively underperformed this season, and I don't know how much longer you've got with that player. if I was Solskjaer at this point in time, I'd be looking to sell him because I just, the age he is and the amount of goals and what's his highest goal scoring? Is it 23 a season or something like that? So I just don't see him getting any better. So, United are still after Sancho, but is that necessarily the right option to do? Because, I think they still need a clinical striker because we don't know what's happening with Cavani. He's likely to move on.
Yeah.
And you've also got Ahmed. So are you filling positions where you shouldn't be filling? And you do need a new centre-back to sort out Maguire's mistakes because Lindelof can't do it and Bailly's too injury prone. And obviously you've not been playing Van der Beek. There's been a few issues at the club and we don't know what's going on with Pogba at the moment, if he's staying or going. That's up in the air as well. It's a little bit indifferent at the moment. So I think there's a lot of problems that Man United still need to solve, and we keep saying that year on year. But I just think they need some more horsepower up front, and I don't necessarily think Martial is. And do you want to wait another season? You could get 30 or 40 million pounds on it. And interestingly enough, James Cooper was discussing it, which normally he's quite briefed by the club. And he was discussing about Martial, probably his time to go. So it'll be interesting summer. But, if they keep on the same front three, it's going to be another season of disappointment in my view.
Yeah. You mentioned something there that Manchester City don't play with a striker, but they still manage to score a lot of goals. And not a lot of goals, but they still manage to get results. Now, I want to bring this to you because you're a neutral. Do you think Manchester United's manager, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, is a factor in their, let's say, underperformance?
I wouldn't say I'm a neutral when it comes to United, but
yeah, that was a bit the wrong choice of words, but
no, I don't. Okay, so I think it's kind of, if you look at something like a manager like Ole, the question is who would or could you replace him with that would do a better job? And you had Mourinho before. I don't think there's anybody out there that could. If you had a different manager, the results would be different.
Yeah.
To me, like the problems of United come from the players. Like your players aren't good enough. Not all of them, right? Like off the top of my head, Rashford, Fernandes.
Fred will be happy.
Yeah,
really, really good players. But I think it's like sometimes the matches are slow and they're flat, right? But again, I think that's just something to do with this season. I don't think changing the manager would help at all. I think you need one or two more really good players, a world-class centre-back, because I don't think you have a world-class centre-back. Sorry to Harry Maguire. And somebody up front who can score more. And look, anybody, Manchester United can get any player in the world if they want them. There's probably only like 3 or 4 players in the world that they couldn't get if they really wanted them. So it's just a question of whether or not they'll get those players. Sancho would be a good shout. Haaland would be a good shout as well. I don't know who you'd get to fill in the centre back, but I'm sure you could find somebody. I don't think Ole is at fault here, really.
The centre back with that is Pau Torres at the moment. It's number one priority for Manchester United, being that he's got most of the attributes that they want. I'm a neutral as well, so I second what Matt says, is that your players don't wear the badge like other clubs. If you look at Liverpool or Chelsea or Man City, they wear the badge with pride. In the past, United have spent ridiculous money on some players, like Sanchez, for instance, who turned up training day one apparently and didn't like it. So he just went for money, and there's been a lot of players like that in the past with United, and those are where the problems come. So, if you go back to the Ferguson days, he had a crap squad and still won the title because his players wanted to play on the pitch for that manager. And that's part of the problem. And everyone can see it. And it is frustrating. But, it's the same thing with Pogba. The fact that Pogba is one of your best players, for me, it's a little bit annoying, I would say, because he what is it, 90 million they spent for him, and I don't think he's been consistent enough. And there's been a lot of players like that for Manchester United. So, they need to get players in who want to play for the club and will be consistently performing. And there are a few players out there right now, but it's whether or not Manchester United decide to get the checkbook out. And that stems, and I say this, it's not just the manager, it stems from the Glazers and their structure and how they do stuff. They went and got a director of football in, but that director of football has been working at United for years. So we need to see if he is able to do anything with the club, because he might again be one of the yes mans for Glazers, and that's where the problem starts. So how ambitious are your owners? Because if you look at Roman Abramovich for Chelsea, he'll just get a checkbook out and spend because he cares about the club. And that's the problem with Manchester United. I don't necessarily think it's down to Wally, and because he didn't even get the transfer targets he wanted in the summer. So how can you blame someone who doesn't get that? He wanted Sancho, he didn't get Sancho. There's desperation that came in, and just to finish off, they signed Cavani on the last day because they were desperate for a striker. But a club of Manchester United size shouldn't be doing that. So they should have the transfers done and done. But the last 5 or 6 years, and David Gill was good at it, but Woodward's has not been good enough. Then that's where it comes from. Really.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. Like, to me, it seems that Woodward is a gigantic problem for Manchester United. He just seems, I don't know, almost incompetent or possibly even malicious. I remember a couple of years ago, didn't some fans turn up outside his house and like demand his death or something?
Yeah, a little bit crazy.
I mean, from my opinion, I hope he stays at Manchester United a long time. but he's definitely, I think, it's definitely a curse for the club. What I think, every fan wants every player at their club to wear the shirt proudly, right? But I think what Man United doesn't necessarily have is leadership. I think that's part of the reason why they wanted Maguire, because he seemed like a leader. And if you look at, let's say, when Vincent Kompany was at one sometimes. But I think that's what United needs in a player, is real leadership on the pitch. To an extent, I think maybe Bruno does that. Maybe I don't watch too many United games, but you need leadership.
I think in that, and just to finish off, Maguire was very expensive, 80 million. That was a ridiculous amount of money, but that's English prices, isn't it? Inflates. But he was the key player for Leicester. But Leicester City and Manchester United are different. I know Leicester do well in the league, but you got to look for a born leader, and perhaps someone that's been in the club for a while, and that's been there for a few years and understands it. I see more passion from Rashford than I do see from Maguire. You need, and Bruno Fernandes has been there a year, and he is more proven to me than Maguire is. So I think they do need to have that discussion as well at some point about changing the captain over. But the Premier League season this year has been interesting with West Ham and all the other clubs. Sheffield United, complete opposite from last year, going to get relegated. It's been an off season, but it's been interesting, hasn't it, Fred?
Yeah, it has. Well, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and Manchester United and Liverpool is an ongoing debate. So if you look in the description, you'll see a link to our Discord server. You can chat with many different fans from all over the world about football topics. You'll see transfer news there from the man Chris himself. So if you are interested, make sure to hit the link in the description and join our Discord server. But as you said, Chris, it's been a very interesting Premier League table, but the relegation battle hasn't really been interesting so far this season. I mean, Sheffield United, in my lifetime, I don't think I've seen a club that bad in the Premier League. I don't think they've won a game this season.
But do we think that there's a few things there? Obviously, Chris Wilder probably didn't get the transfers he wanted, and there's been some issues with him and the owners. You see, they then resigned twice, whatever happened there. But also Henderson leaving and not staying at the club. Yeah, I think that's been pivotal for Sheffield United. They didn't really replace him. I know they got that goalkeeper from Bournemouth, but and Ramsdale, but I don't think they've had enough firepower. And they, sometimes a lot of clubs come up from the Championship and go into the Premier League with that renewed vigour of trying to succeed well, and then the second season bites and they get close to the relegation zone. And we've seen it with Wolves recently as well. So I think that's what's happened with Sheffield United this year. I just think it was a freak season before.
Derby was relegated in March in 2007, 2008. I think Sheffield. I'm not sure if Sheffield United performance is worse than the performance of Derby in that season, but they're pretty similar.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Losing Henderson was massive because he had quality. They bought Ryan Brewster from us, and we did a dirty on them. To be honest, 25 million. I don't know if he's even
blind. You robbed him massively blind. I mean, he was touted as a wonder kid, wasn't he? Like, that's always thrown around, that is. But yeah, that was a good deal for Liverpool. That again shows that they've not had enough firepower up front when it's happened. I think although Fulham might get relegated, I think Scott Parker's done quite a good job at Fulham. And because they don't have a massive great squad, but I think he's done a good job. What do you think, Fred?
Yeah, I think, Fulham are actually one of my favorite sides to watch in the Premier League. I know it sounds weird, but it's true. They've got Lookman, who is a very good player, and Gisa, another very good midfielder. They're currently, I think it's going to be between Newcastle and Fulham. See who's going to take the 18th spot. But I wanted to know your predictions on the relegation this season. Who do you think is going to get relegated?
Do you want to start? I'll start. Sheffield United will get relegated for sure. They're gone, so that's the winner. I think Fulham might just get. I just don't think they've got enough depth in the end, and I think Newcastle might go down because I'm surprised they still haven't sacked Steve Bruce. We talked about this a while ago, but he's still there. I think he'll be gone at the end of the season, but that will be massive if they get relegated because of the takeover stuff that still might be going on at the club and those sort of things. But because that will depreciate the club itself on the value. So I think those are my three: Newcastle, Fulham, and Sheffield United.
At the moment, just to jump in, West Brom have 18 points and they're in 19th. Fulham have 26 points and they're in 18th.
Oh, of course, it's West Brom, isn't it?
Exactly.
Well, I'm starting again.
Yeah.
Just ignore that. Fulham, West Brom, and Sheffield United. We'll go there. Completely forgot about West Brom.
I agree. Definitely Sheffield United and West Brom. They're off. They're going. Fulham, and it's really Fulham and Newcastle, isn't it? So I think I would like Newcastle to be relegated because then he'll be forced to sell. They'll get a good owner. They'll be back, and I think Newcastle is a great and old club, and they deserve.
They deserve that, don't they? Yeah, they deserve that.
Yeah,
they've got such a good fan base as well, haven't they?
Yeah. But this is the thing. I don't think they will. I think they'll be like a point away from being relegated, and then it's going to justify the owner's decisions. Sure, they'll get rid of Bruce, but who are they going to get that's any better than him? Nobody. They won't invest in the squad, and I think there's kind of like not to be a pessimist for Newcastle fans, but there's a dark future where they just finish every single Premier League season at like 17, 16, 15.
Absolutely.
Never invest, never get good managers. And that's sad. I feel sad for them, but I think that's what will happen.
They're definitely going to probably lose, say, Maximum as well. I think he'll go at some point. He's better than the club that's currently at. So I think someone's going to have a go at him in the summer.
And that's a part of the problem, isn't it? That when you finish every season in that situation, your players just get raided.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's no value to they can. The value of the player is different to someone who qualifies for the Europa. So then that's like Declan Rice for West Ham. His price will be high if it's still going to be high, but it will be high if they get into European football because of the players they can attract. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Chris, you mentioned West Ham there. I mean, for me, they've been the surprise package in the Premier League this season. You mentioned it, yeah. To be fair to you, you mentioned it in a podcast before. Make sure to subscribe and you can listen to that podcast. Chris did predict that West Ham would be the shock team of the season, and they have been. I mean, they're in 5th place now, 2 points off the top 4. I mean, since
Yeah.
Jesse Lingard came in, I mean, he's been a revelation. He's been amazing for West
Yeah,
Ham so far.
it's quite shocking though, isn't it? That
Yeah.
Jesse Lingard suddenly performs, and I mean that goes back to what we were just discussing about Man United and some of the players not getting the chances and those sort of things. But yeah, for me, West Ham have got, David Moyes has worked wonders there. Finally, he's at a club where he's starting to get his managers, his
Yeah.
reputation's getting rebuilt, because it
Yeah.
has been shot to pieces in the last few years since he went to Man United. It's been downhill, but Jesse Lingard, they've got some good players. I know they sold Haller, but he wasn't very much performing. But since then, they've their midfield, they've got Noble, Weiss, and Soyuncu, is it, or whatever his name is? They've got a lot of good players in the midfield.
Yeah. I think you meant Souček there.
Souček,
Matt,
that's
before we come to you, it looks like 2nd place and 3rd place are pretty much nailed on for Manchester United and Leicester City. But the battle for 4th, just like last season, there's only a 5-point gap between 8th place Everton and 4th place Chelsea. Matt, who do you think is going to take the 4th place and get Champions League football?
I would say never underestimate Brendan Rodgers' ability to bottle things. But if we just assume that Leicester is, I think it's possible that Chelsea will take 3rd and Leicester take 4th, for example.
Really?
But yeah. But I don't know. I would say, looking at the table right now, if the season ended in this order, I would not be surprised. If you want me to make a prediction, then I'm going to say City take the title, United 2nd, Chelsea 3rd, West Ham 4th.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Chris, what about you?
I just want to mention how how bad of a manager Lampard must have been if Tuchel comes in with the current squad and gets them up to 4th place. He's made them organised. Obviously he's a great manager. There'll be a threat next season. I can tell you that now. But Lampard was always, it's one of those things. Players going back to a club managing doesn't always work out. But Chelsea definitely going to get top 4 for me. I think Leicester might bottle it towards the end. They've done it before, only because of their injuries and those sort of things. So I think Man City, Manchester United, Chelsea, and then I would say Leicester might just cling on to 4th, because I think West Ham might. They've been floating a little bit and lost a couple of games recently. So I can see Leicester just holding on slightly.
Yeah, I predict City to win the league, obviously. United comes. I actually think Leicester are going to come 2nd, because we've seen in the past few weeks that quite a few United players are getting injured. I think that's going to play a massive part in it.
Leicester got some tough games though, Fred.
Yeah, but so do United. I mean, I think United still had to play Spurs, Chelsea,
Liverpool.
Yeah, they've still got a lot of difficult games coming up. But it's all set up to be an amazing end to the Premier League this season. Matt has been amazing today. As I said, make sure to go, the link in the description, to go to our Discord server. So many brilliant discussions going on there. You will also see the link for our Twitter handle and our Instagram handle, our new Instagram handle, where football analysis, transfer news, etc. A lot of exciting stuff coming for Football League Hub. Again, thank you to my co-host today, Ma, who was amazing, and Chris. And we'll see you in the next podcast.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Appreciate today. And look forward to you on the next podcast.